Okay, this is a video about how to create a bitmap file using only a hex editor. First, I apologize for the advertisement up in this corner because I got a free app through Windows to help me do this because I didn't want to pay for anything. But first, let's get started. So you open a new file. In HXD is the hex editor that I chose. It automatically sets it up so it has 16 rows of hexadecimal values, and then the output will show up over here. So first and foremost, what you have to do is set up the first 2 bytes of the file, which is part of the file header, and this indicates the file type. And so the file type we chose is a bitmap file, which has the values B and M. So we have to put in the hex values in 00 and 01 for BM. So those values are 42 and 4D. And then after that shows that it's a bitmap file over here because it's BM. And then after this, we have to, the next 4 bytes are 02, 03, 04, and 05. Those are the file size. So we're going to do 86, 00, 00, 00. And 86 converted to decimal is 134. And so all bytes in the file altogether is 134 bytes. So that's what that is. And then after that, we do 2 more zeros, and then 2 more zeros again, and then 36, and then 3 more zeros. So at this point we have the file type, the file size, and the data offset, which is right here. It's 0A through 0D. The bytes in here are just a bit of a filler. And then this 00 through 0D is the file header. And then after this, the next bytes we're going to do is the dib header. So first we're going to do a 28 and then 3 sets of zeros, and those are the size of the dib header, which converted to decimal is 40. So there are 40 bytes total in the dib header. And next we're going to do 05 and then 3 zeros, and then another 05 and 3 zeros, and then a 01, 00, and then a 18, and then 3 more zeros to fill in the row. And then I will go over and explain this. So for row 2, there are 4 or 5 different elements that need to be explained. So first we have 28, 00, 00, 00, 0. And that is, those last 2 zeros are obviously a carryover from up here. And those specify the size of the dib header, which is 40 bytes, and 28 converted to decimal is 40. So it's 40 bytes total for the dib header. And then the next set is 05, 00, 00, 00, 0, 0, 0, 0. And those are the bytes that specify the height of the bitmap file, which is 5. And then the next 4 are the same thing. And so that is the width. So that shows it as a 5 by 5 file. Now, the 0100 for these 2 bytes is the number of color planes. And the number of color planes must always be 1 when you're making a bitmap file. In this row is 18, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And this set of hexadecimal values sets the number of bits. Oh wait, sorry about that. Okay, so 1800 are the set of 2 bits. This set of 2 bits specifies the number of bits per pixel, which is essentially the color depth of the image. And so 18 is the hexadecimal value for 24 in decimals. So this image that we will be creating has a value, or a bits per pixel value, the color depth of 24 bits. And then next we have 2 zeros, and that needs to be completed with 2 more zeros, and that's just kind of a filler. And then after that we have 50, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, which is our next set of 4. And then after this we have a C5 and then 3 more zeros, and then another C5 and then 3 more zeros, and I'll go over this row when I'm done with it too. And then the last 2 will also be zeros, but that's the start of the next set of 4. So the first 2 bits or bytes are the carryovers from these 2 bytes, and that's just kind of a filler between the 18 and the 50. And the 50 and the accompanying 3 zeros afterwards are the size of the image itself, which is 50 bytes in hexadecimal, which is the image size, which is 50 in hexadecimal, which in decimal is 80. So the actual image size is 80 bytes. And then after this we get into the C5s, which are the horizontal and vertical resolution of the image. So these 4 represent the horizontal resolution, and then these 4 represent the vertical resolution of the image. And then after this we have the 2 last sets of 4 in the div header, and start 0, 0, and we're actually just going to fill it out the rest with zeros. So then the end of this is the div header. So right now we have the file header, which is these at the top. Oops, sorry. These 14, and then the div header, which starts at 28 and then goes down to here, and that's 40 bytes. So that was the hard part, and now the rest of it is just filling out the hexadecimal values for RGB values, which will actually show up in the color. So the first thing you need to know about the color values in a bitmap file when you're using hexadecimal is that it flips the values around. So rather than typically RGB, it is a BGR. So we have to keep that in mind when we... The second thing you need to know about filling in the colors for the last bytes of the file is that it starts in the lower left corner of the file. So in our 5x5 pixel file, the first one to be filled out will be the lower left. The pattern we're going to use for the bottom row, since it starts in the bottom left, is going to be blue, red, blue, red, blue. So since it's BGR, the first thing we need to do is put in the blue value for the bottom left corner, which is going to be FF, so it's at the max blue value, and then 2 zeros. So this is blue since it's BGR rather than RGB, so this is the max blue value with the least green and red values. So next we have red, which is the opposite of blue, which is 0, 0, 0, 0, FF. And then we will just continue to alternate throughout the rest of the row. And since there is 5 pixels in each row, there needs to be 15 total bytes of color for each row. And then something special will happen when we get to the end of the row. So we got FF0000. And then we have 0000 FF. And then we have FF0000. So now we're at the end of the row for the colors. So once you get to the end of every row, you have to put a pad in between the end of that row and the start of the next row, which is a 00. We'll start the second row after we just made the pad. The pad, if you notice, makes it so the rows will always have the same starting point at 06 right here. So now for the second one, rather than going blue, red, blue, red, blue, we're going to go red, blue, red, blue, red. So we have, keeping with the opposite red, green, blue as blue, green, red, so we have 0000 FF, which is red with the red max value, and then we have FF0000. And note that each color always has 3 bytes, with one each corresponding to blue, green, and red. And then after that we have 0000 FF, and then FF0000, and then 0000 FF, and then of course the closing pad at the end of the line. And then next we're going to have 2 white pixels with a yellow pixel in the center of the file, and then 2 more whites at the end of the row. So, or sorry, I changed my mind. Instead of white, we're going to do black. So rather than white, we're going to have 2 blacks and then a yellow and then 2 more blacks at the end of the row. And then blacks are the lowest value for each red, green, and blue value. So that's obviously 0. So a black is just 3 bytes of 0. So we got 3 bytes of 0. That's black for that byte, or for that pixel in the file. And then we got 3 more, which is another pixel. And then to make yellow, we do 00 for blue, and then we do FF, which is the max value for green, and then the max value for red, because red and green make yellow. And then we finish the row with 2 more black pixels of 000000. And then, of course, the 0 at the end of the row. And then the beginning of the next row, we're just going to go back to make it symmetrical with the bottom 2 rows. So we're going to start with the most inward one, which was red, blue, red, blue, red. So we're going to do 0000 FF as red to start, and then FF0000. This row is going to end up being the same as the second row we did. And then 0000 FF, and then FF0000, and then 2 more zeros, and an FF, and then of course the 0 to end the row. And then last row we're going to have, this is the last row, and then when we're done with this, we add the end of the line, and then that is the end of the hexadecimal values of the file. So for this, we're just going to do it the same as the first row we had, which was FF0000, which corresponds to blue. And then we do blue, red, blue, red, blue, red. So we got blue, and then we got 0000 FF for red, and then blue, and then red, which is 0000 FF. And then the last color, which corresponds to the last pixel in the file, will be FF0000. Now we have to remember, even though this is the last row, it does need the zeros at the end for the pad. Now what we can do to check to see if the file worked and is a successful bitmap file with the colors that we wanted to use. We will save it as a bitmap file. Now I'm just going to save it to the desktop as a, let's just call it test.bmp. Now we're going to minimize this. We're going to go find test. Apologize for the screen software. And then we're going to open this with a Microsoft Paint, actually. Now we have to see what happens here. Sorry, my original file, or original opener, I guess, was Windows Photo Viewer rather than Microsoft Paint, so we're going to try to open it in Microsoft Paint. Alright, first, I guess I totally missed the Open With tab in the right click of the test, but first I'm going to close this so it doesn't distract you. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to right click again, and I totally missed this where you could open it with Microsoft Paint. That's my bad, sorry. And now we're going to hopefully see the file that we made up in this little corner right here. This is the entire file right here. So in order to see if it was what we wanted it to be, we're going to zoom in. So I'll go to view and then zoom in and then click on it a few times. Oh, okay, I guess that doesn't actually zoom in. So, and then right here, okay, so what I just did was I essentially just ruined the bitmap file. So if you accidentally do this, rather than save, do not save, just exit out without saving, because this, adding this rather than zooming in is a pretty common mistake. And since it didn't zoom in, it actually added all of these white pixels to the bitmap file. And we obviously don't want that. So I messed that up, I'm sorry. And I'm just going to exit out without saving so that it doesn't completely ruin the file. And I guess we're just going to reopen it because I made a dumb mistake. And we're going to do it right this time. Okay, so now we're just going to zoom in. I'm guessing just clicking this button zooms it in. And then eventually the file will stop zooming in. It'll get to its maximum size that we can see it. And I think this is the last one. Alright, there we go. Now you can actually see what it is. So, as you can see, the colors of each pixel do match up with what the color information we put in was. So it does go blue, red, blue, and then alternate, and then have two black and yellow in the middle and two black, and then the opposite of what we did down here again. So it did work, and I'm honestly kind of surprised, but I'm glad that it worked, obviously. And now I'm just going to make a little reminder of what the last two or or three most important things are about making bitmap files that you have to remember. First and foremost, and this is clearly the most important one because you can't make a file without this, is the first 2 bytes for the top of the file and the file header have to be 42, 4D to specify the type of file, and that of course lines up with BM, and that specifies that it is a bitmap file. And if you don't do this, you will not have a file that works because it will not be a bitmap file. And second, I'd say the second most important thing is to always remember to put in the 00 pad in between the end of one row and the beginning of another row. And last, do not make the mistake that I did with Microsoft Paint. Make sure that you zoom in and actually zoom in, and don't try to expand the file because all it does is add useless pixels to the file. And if you do that, then do not save your Microsoft Paint because it will ruin the file, and then you'll have to go back into the Hex and redo all of it. and it will not be nice. So thank you for listening and watching, and I hope that this was a very informative video about how to create bitmap files using only a hex editor.